people tend to miss the fact that good design tied into, of course, biophilic design, which is what we specialize in, and the psychology of colors have a huge impact on children or even adults for that matter in school. Children with ADHD, how colors play a certain level of calmness or more inspired learning or more creativity.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bespoke, the Sarah Z Designs podcast. My name is Christina.
I'm Sarah, the owner and lead designer of Sarah Z Designs, and this is Bespoke. And today we are delighted to host a very special guest, Tiffany Emano, who is the owner of Kidz Solutions. Hi, Tiff. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here.
So, Tiff, could you share some more about who you are, what you do, and kind of a brief overview of Kidz Solutions?
Yes, of course. So, I am the owner and founder of Kidz Solutions. We are an educational therapy and tutoring company. We specialize in working with children who have learning disabilities and special needs. We offer a variety of services, educational services, such as school shadowing, one-on-one tutoring, homeschool support, and enrichment classes. We travel to schools and to homes as well, and we see children in grades K to 8.
How did you get started into it? Can you give us a little background?
Yes, of course. So I've actually been in the education field for almost 15 years now, which is crazy to think about it. But I originally started, I have my bachelor's in psychology. And then later on, I went to get my master's in ESC K to 12, so exceptional student education. And then I also have a master's level degree in behavior analysis. So the whole company, it ties into a multi-sensory and behavior analytic approach to teaching.
I love that. So, what inspired you to start Kidz Solutions, and what does your role kind of look like on the day to day?
So right now, my role has transitioned a little bit. I do a lot more of the back end work of it. I create a lot of the programs for the students, the assessments. Um, I work a lot one on one with the students directly. However, I don't do the tutoring day to day anymore. But I oversee everything.
Right, that's a very important
I
role.
know that you specialize more with kids that have more learning disabilities or have a different type of learning. And I'm a little familiar because my daughter Esty had learning issues growing up. And that kind of inspired you to take your business into a different path. Can you give us some information about that?
Yes. So originally I started off working in a school. I've worked in the public and private school system. And when I was working in this school, I didn't feel like I was able to teach children the way that they learned. I think that nowadays in a classroom, I think there are so many different exceptionalities and children that need different things. So something that inspired me to open Kidz Solutions was I really wanted to create a space that children can come and feel safe. They can come and feel like we can teach them the way that they learn. So we do specialize a lot in working with children who have dyslexia, processing deficits, ADHD, autism. So every child is different. Every child has the potential to shine.
And you cater to those
Yes,
children on
that's
their
what we
own level.
specialize in.
Right.
Exactly. So our most popular program is our intensive academic solutions program, for example. And what we really do is I would do a baseline assessment on that child based on what's going on. So every learning challenge, every exceptionality is different. Every child is different. So we would create that I would do an assessment and I would create a program specific for that
For
child.
that child.
And you would set different goals for that child specifically. So Kid Solutions is really about a safe space, children being able to come and feel safe and feel that it's okay to ask questions, to not be sure of what they're doing,
And getting them to the point where they need to eventually be, and mainstreaming, and
And meeting those benchmarks.
right,
Right.
and eventually graduating and being able to go to college and moving on, and
For sure.
and
And one of the goals for all our children that do come to us is that we can eventually fade out our services. And that's the most important part, is because children really with learning disabilities really struggle. And one thing that I see all the time is they struggle with their self-esteem
right.
and frustration. And once that really just they don't have that self-esteem anymore, then you see the frustration in school. You see a lot of different things going on that they
So
just
you give
struggle
them
with.
the tools to be able to overcome those frustrations, because once they finish or they meet a certain benchmark and they're excited about it because they mastered it, then you're kind of building up their self-esteem, their health, and to boost their
So
confidence.
you create the kind of environment where they are able to kind of speak up for themselves and kind of build that sense of self and sense of confidence in their ability to learn.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things within Kidz Solutions as well is that when a child comes to us, a lot of them do come to us with low self-esteem and they're frustrated. And a lot of the times the schools see that as a behavioral issue, when in reality it's not. They're just really struggling because they can't keep up with the class, they can't keep up with the work. So I always tell parents, when your child comes to us, the second session, it's going to be a lot about positive pairing, positive reinforcement, getting their self-esteem back up, having them feel confident, because if they don't have that confidence, you're not going to be able to even get to the academic piece, and once they feel that they can do it again, you start to see they're reaching those short-term goals, and then they're reaching the longer term goals, and then you set new ones and they're feeling excited. So I think that it really, when you're working with a child one-on-one, you really get to pair with that child on a positive level. It makes such a difference.
I'm a firm believer of positive reinforcement, not only with children and like even my kids that are teenagers, but
Yeah.
even in the workplace. Sometimes it's hard when you're working under pressure, or even with, kids. I feel like when I'm harsh or negative with my kids, they just shut down, kind of like
Yeah.
my employees too, who are my kids.
Yeah, my kids too. My kids as well.
But when I do give that positive reinforcement, of course, I'm not saying, oh, positive reinforcement in a way where, oh, you don't have to do
Like
this, it's
coddling.
okay, or
Yeah.
coddling, or there are consequences that you have to do certain things. And if you don't meet those benchmarks or expectations, you will deal with the consequences, but you can deal with it on a positive note and
Yeah.
bringing them up and building them up
Like to
instead.
uplift
Of
them.
course.
Exactly,
Yes.
instead of shutting them down.
And you'd be surprised how often, unfortunately, in the classroom, it's not intentional by any teachers or by anyone, but like I'm sure we're going to get into, the environment plays a big role. And sometimes they're getting even negative attention sometimes, and then they're shutting down. And once a child really shuts down, it's very difficult. So when we work with any child that we have, it's a lot of positive reinforcement, and it's not coddling like you were saying. It's very much like, these are the goals that we're going to reach. You can do it. Encouragement. We're so proud of you. Look how well you're doing. And they get there. You
So
know?
I think, from my own personal experience, my daughter who's 26, 27 today, wow, and she just had a baby, but she had learning issues, learning disabilities, and I put her in a certain program in elementary school where it was really, you know, closing in and bringing her self-esteem down. And I remember when I was in school overseeing a lot of the things that they put in place, and I saw how I as a parent couldn't help her, and how frustrating it was, and then how she lost a lot of her self-esteem. It took me like 2 to 3 years to rebuild on her awareness and her self-esteem, to bring back her self-confidence, and to really give her all the mastering, you know tricks and learning abilities that she could master certain things, and eventually getting her to mainstream and graduate college and get married and go on with her life. But I thought that, I don't think teachers do it on purpose. I just think that because they have so many children and they're in such a huge class environment, that they cannot cater um, to that student one on one. And that's where it's amazing where you come in, because you can help those kids.
Particular kids who
Exactly.
can't get
That
that special attention.
exactly, which I think is such an added value to any parent, because before you spend money on anything else, I think the priority is giving the tools to your kids to be able to mainstream in life and be able to live a healthy, confident life through putting whether it is, like my daughter at the time was doing addition through dot math. So like you have your ways of teaching them and mastering, and that's why I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much. I think you're 100% right. I think that a lot of the times these children, of course, you sometimes you have to get a diagnosis to see really what's going on, but a lot of these children are sometimes put in a bubble, or they're labeled as something that they can't accomplish certain things. And the truth of the matter is that every child can accomplish anything that they put their mind to. And I know that you mentioned your daughter and how she struggled through school, and it's interesting that you say that because my son also has a reading disability, and seeing how much he was struggling when he was younger, as a parent, I'm a teacher, but as a parent, seeing it from my eyes, as from that perspective, was also very difficult for me. And I see that now as he's reading and as he is developing and doing much better in school, I think that it brought his confidence up tremendously. And I think that every child needs to be given that opportunity. So we really try at Kidz Solutions to be able to even allow us a safe space for parents
Right.
to come and be able to express how they're feeling. Because
Because a
when your
lot of the
child,
parents are frustrated when they
yeah,
see that their kids are
yeah,
frustrated.
you become frustrated. You don't know how to help. Even for my own child,
Right.
I'm a teacher. And when I was trying to help him, it was completely different. But when a child is given the right tools that they need to learn, then we try to give them all the tools in their toolbox,
Mhm.
and they can choose the way that works best for them.
Um,
And I do think that teachers can, not on purpose, but sometimes in a large classroom, in a bigger environment with a lot more going on, I just don't think that they have the tools in that classroom to be able to cater to all of those
And
children.
they don't have the time. How do
They
you
don't
have
have
the
the
time when the
time.
period is like 40
40 minutes
minutes,
and you're
you know?
Yes.
teaching over 100 kids per day.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like,
We go into schools a lot of the time too as advocates for children. And the reason is because a lot of these children are in general education classrooms and they have accommodations. And sometimes the teachers haven't read the evaluation, or they can't accommodate them. But at the end of the day, it's that child's right to have those accommodations
yeah.
to
Right.
better help them, to make sure they succeed, to make sure they don't
Of
shut down.
course. Of
So I think
course.
that's
Yes.
also very
And that's why
important.
spaces like Kid Solutions are so important. I
Yeah.
believe so.
Right.
Is this something you've always been passionate about, educating children?
So I knew I always wanted to work with children. I love working with children. Um, Now I have my own children,
And then
God
you're about
willing,
to
one
have
on the
another
way,
one.
which is super exciting.
Congratulations.
So, yes, I'm super excited. But working with children has always been my passion. I started in psychology, like I mentioned. And then as I started working, after school, when I was in my master's program for exceptional student education, I started working as a behavioral therapist. And then I really fell in love with working with children who were struggling, working with children who just needed that extra support. So, it kind of just grew, I think. In the school system, I didn't feel like I was able to deliver the teaching methods that I knew that I could. I felt that I was a little bit restricted in the classroom. So, opening Kid Solutions has really been a safe space, even for me, to be able to teach the way that I know each child learns.
And
So,
I'm sure that when you see a child or a student master, it's so gratifying. It's like us when we design something for a client and it's amazing,
And
or
it's
they
better than
love
that what
their
they could have possibly dreamed.
right, or
mhm,
they love
Right.
their safe space, or they love what we've designed for them, and they're just amazed and so happy and so appreciative.
yeah,
Like the parents, it's so gratifying and it
yeah.
gives you so much.
That's the best part about
Right,
it is that it's not even, when the kids first come to us, they're just by the time we say graduate,
right.
by the time they graduate, it's amazing. I had a student that he was in 5th grade and he was on the autism spectrum. He was with me for 3 years. And when he first came to me, he was working on a first grade level in math and his self-esteem was very low and he didn't have that confidence. He felt like he would never be able to just add or
Mm,
subtract or do simple calculations. And by the time he graduated from us,
right,
he ended up going to a regular school. He was homeschooled before when he came
right.
to us, and he was working on grade level work.
That's
And to
amazing.
me, that's the
It's
most
huge.
rewarding
Of
thing
course.
that you can do, that you can
And I'm sure
see.
the parents have so much gratitude to you because you've gotten their child to a certain point where, he
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to get to on his own
I
or in a
still speak
regular
to them till
class setting,
today
I'm sure.
just to catch up and see how he's doing. And now he's in a special ed classroom, but he's in a regular school. His behaviors decreased tremendously, so he's able to function in the classroom on his own and independently, and it's amazing to see. So it's very rewarding.
Speaking of working with children with learning exceptionalities, for listeners who may not know, can you explain the differences in how they interact with their learning environments?
Yes, of course. I think that every child is different. So depending on the learning challenge that they have or what's going on really affects the child differently, but you can really see what's going on. It can affect the child in school academically and at home as well. So it can affect them socially and emotionally, which is with their self esteem. It can affect a lot of students with when they're frustrated. Sometimes socially, also, if they have a processing delay, might make it a little bit harder for them to get through day to day tasks in the classroom. Socially, a lot of the times we see that they struggle because their confidence is down. So socially, they don't have many friends, which can affect them even more. It can even affect a child at home with something as simple as multi-step instructions. When you come home, you put your backpack in, you take out your homework, you complete your homework, you put your homework back. These simple steps that may come easy to us are so difficult for certain children. And unless they're really given those tools to teach them how to be successful, how to be independent, at home and in school, they're going to struggle. So I think there are a lot of factors that can go into it.
When it comes to like the actual learning physical environment, what do you see most within the day-to-day classroom that teachers might not know that kind of create some more challenges on the sensory aspect?
So that's a great question. I think large environments, the bigger classrooms, make it very difficult sometimes. I think that also when there's a lot of stuff around the classroom, posters, if it's
Clutter.
clutter, if a teacher is disorganized, that's going to make the child disorganized. If a child has a processing deficit and the teacher gives a direction only verbally, they don't write down the directions. Following that multi-step instruction might be very difficult. The child will get lost, and a lot of times they don't want to advocate for themselves, especially if they're younger.
Or they're embarrassed
They're
in a larger
embarrassed. They
class
don't wanna
setting.
say, "I don't understand," or "What did you say?" So I think that, the larger environments, the multi-step instructions,
I think that's something that this generation is also losing as I remember being in middle school and we had to learn cursive writing. And I find that today there's no writing at all. Like even my kids, they can't even like sign their name. They had to practice because they didn't teach them cursive writing in school. And I find that all they do is type away. But there's something, and I see it with myself personally, when I write what I need to do, it just stays in my mind versus just reading an email and then forgetting about it. But when I sit there actually writing a list, it goes from
It's something
the
from putting pen
mind
to
to
paper.
paper. And like you remember, and there's a way of it sticking with you where I think today a lot of the kids lose that. And because they don't have that and they don't teach that in school. And I
It's
think
that
it's an
And
important,
those darned
multisensory.
iPads.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that multisensory approach, seeing it and then writing it and then letting it process and then completing it. And then also sometimes going back and checking it off. I
and
also
you,
make to-do lists
right, me
all
too,
day.
all day.
Yeah, all the time.
But you mentioned something about the design of the classroom as far as clutter and organization. And that's where um, I think people tend to miss the fact that good design, tied into, of course, biophilic design, which is what we specialize in, design tied into nature and the psychology of colors have a huge impact on children or even adults for that matter in school. Children with ADHD, how colors play a certain level of calmness or um, more inspired learning or more creativity in a space where we just recently designed a school. And a lot of the colors that we used were very natural based colors and larger scale windows open into nature where the kids can be inspired and stare out into nature, and incorporating light blues and light greens, which create a calming, safe environment where it's more, I would say, more calming and more sensory and learning
Yeah, it
friendly.
regulates their nervous system too.
Exactly. It regulates, or in an art room where we used a little bit of brighter colors like yellows and purples to promote creativity
And
and
inspiration.
inspiration. So I think that a lot of the schools are turning more into nature inspired designs and calming spaces where ADHD kids or kids with sensory issues have that safe space and that place where they can actually just focus in. Clutter is a big no-no,
Oh,
like you said.
yes,
They need
of
organization,
course.
they need, less
Less is more.
less is more,
Less is more,
exactly, for them to be able to
of course.
concentrate. And I think that a lot of schools are turning into it because they see a difference in the way kids are learning also. And I know that you actually in your previous office had designed a beautiful sensory gym. So can you tell us part of the design and the color scheme that you used?
Yes, of course. So designing my office was probably my favorite part. I loved it. We had a sensory gym in that office, and the reason that parents would ask me, why do you have a sensory gym if you're a tutoring company? And when I explained that we need to create a safe space for children to be able to come and regulate their emotions. And sometimes when we're working with children on challenging tasks, a lot of the times we would take a break and go in the sensory room. And how I really tried to design the sensory room with bright colors like you were saying, but calming. So I painted the walls like a light blue. I had light green in there. I tried to create one of the walls to look like a sky outdoors, so when children would come in, they would feel very comfortable. I incorporated a lot of sensory based things. So we had a trampoline so children can regulate a little bit better if they needed to. We had darker blue padding on the floor to give them that tactile feeling. We had things on the walls, but again, less was more.
Right.
So,
And it was based a lot of based on nature inspired,
Yes,
which
a lot.
is very calming and not only for
Very.
children, but for humans,
Oh,
because
of
Yeah,
we
in
course.
are
It was my
general. Yes.
favorite.
connected to
It
nature,
was my
right?
favorite room in the office. I loved going in, and I'll never forget. I had a parent come in one day because I used to give tours, of course, to new parents and new families. And a parent said to me, "Wow, your office is so calming." And she said, when my daughter went to a different tutoring facility last year, and when I walked in, I didn't even want to be there. She said the walls were yellow, but that dark yellow, and the desks were wood, dark wood. She said, and it was just very depressing. So I think, like you were saying, it's so important to understand what color scheme you're going to incorporate, and not just for students with exceptionalities and learning challenges, but for everyone.
Of
I wanted to
course,
create a space where I wanted to go to work,
100%.
and I wanted to feel calm.
And that's where people like are starting to realize, like the school that we designed, most of the classrooms were light walls. Even there was no chalkboards anymore. We just did a dry erase entire wall where you can write and erase and the kids could color and erase, and blue walls, open to nature, large escape windows, open into nature where you just saw trees, because eyes need to get inspired,
Oh,
kids
of
need to get
course.
inspired. You want to be in nature. You just incorporating trees and plants, and a little bringing in nature into the interior, which is what we do. And now more and more research is showing, not only is it health, does it have health added benefits
Oh, of
for
course.
students, it's healing,
Healing.
but also for hospitals. Hospitals did research in Sweden. There was a hospital that did research where they faced the patients towards a larger scape window, staring into trees in the exterior. They did much better. They healed much quicker, and they
Required
ended
less
up
pain medication.
required less medication, and they ended up leaving the hospital a lot earlier than a patient just staring into a blank wall or a TV.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I think there's a lot more research to be done, obviously, but the health benefits are very apparent, with good design and, inspired into nature, tied into nature, and you see it in your own
Yeah.
space. So
I created my entire office based on that. Even the floors in the office were a light gray, and I made sure that all of the desks were dry erase, so you had the white. So when children walked in, it felt bright, it felt open, relaxing. I even put
Very.
in special lighting,
right,
lighting that wasn't too dark, but it wasn't too light, so
because
that
that also has a major impact on
yes.
Lighting is
students.
big.
It's very
Like
big.
Right. If
fluorescent, bright lights. It's very uncomfortable typically.
Yeah.
So it's like warmer,
right.
softer toned lighting. It's more conducive to a calming environment.
Yeah, of course. And remember, I'm sure as you decorate all the school and the amazing project that you did, you could see less is more. And sometimes you just need the right colors
That's
and
right.
the right view outside, and that's all you really need, and kids will flourish.
Right. No clutter, cleanliness.
Yeah, and I think that goes into the homes too.
I
And
think it goes
people's
in. I
yeah.
agree, definitely. I know from my personal experience, when I come into my office and my desk is filled with samples because of all the new stuff that comes in, and I have piles to go through, I just get agitated and overwhelmed. Where I walk into my office and my desk is clean, I could focus in, I could zero in, I'm much more productive, and I'm an
Yeah.
adult,
Yeah, of
and so I
course.
can't imagine children that are just
Y-
starting out
Like
that.
their brains are still developing. They're still
Exactly,
little.
Of
and it's so
course.
overwhelming when you have, like, I know, of course, there's a difference between the public school system and the private school system, because in a lot of the private schools you have dual curriculum and you have like 10 classes a day. So just imagine, and you know better than we do, how overwhelming it is for a student to go from back to back to back classes, and it's just become so overwhelming.
It's a lot, and I've walked into classrooms in public and private schools, and some classrooms were completely the walls were covered in posters and things, and the teacher's desk had papers everywhere. And I think that also plays a big factor. I've seen from my personal experience in classrooms for younger children, a lot of teachers are starting to create more center-based classrooms. So it also brings that organizational piece where it may be a bigger class for a child. They may have 18, 20 kids, but the class is set up more center based. So you have different centers within the room where if they're in one area, it may be more sensory based. Then they might have an area for writing. Then they might have another area. So I think that also organizes the kids a little bit better and allows them to focus
Yeah,
and be more
defining different
successful.
spaces.
Exactly.
Love.
So I think it plays a big part.
We're going to be speaking in Miami Convention Center next Friday at APAX. And the topic is collaboration or collision. And I always, and my son, he's in high school, he's a junior. He came home this week and he was complaining about his teacher that they had a group project collaborating and that he was very prepared and he knew everything that he presented, but the other two students were not as prepared and he was not happy with the grade and his grade was affected by the other two students. And he went up to the teacher and he said that I don't think that's fair. I was prepared, so why should I be penalized for the other two students that were not prepared? And he said, well, it's collaboration. It's a collaborative project. You're working together, so it's your responsibility to make sure that your peers are just as prepared as you are. And by not doing so, that affected your grade. Of course, my son,
Yeah.
he wouldn't let up and he was like kept going and going but it's true. And I think that's an important part that, you know, not only kids, but of course team members and like we have 20 people on my team that are forced to collaborate and work together and work in a cohesive environment and not point fingers at, oh, but I didn't do this or she did this and to learn that it is the responsibility of the team. And I think that's an important part that teachers have to teach
Oh,
starting
of
in,
course. Of
elementary.
100%.
100%. Because a lot of work that you do end up doing in adulthood is very collaborative,
Right.
unless you're working remotely or like you're doing something in tech and you get to be all alone. Like, for example, we work in an office and with a team. We're constantly interacting not only with each other, but with the clients. So,
Yeah.
learning in school
And the
how,
vendors as
yes, and the
well.
Yeah.
So
vendors. So, like learning in school how to like manage those things and group collaboration. It's very, very, very important.
And when I work with my team, and my teachers, I meet with them once a week. And even though we travel to schools and to homes, and I might not see them every day, I've created digital binders for all of our students. And we have to collaborate. They need to update on their end. I update on mine. And we speak every week because in order for a child to be successful, you need to work as a team. You
of
need to
course.
collaborate. And I think you're right. In schools, that has to happen more. Even for a child with a learning disability or an exceptionality. Let's say you have a child with dyslexia, and they have psychological evaluation. They need the parents and the principal and the entire team need to work together in order to make sure that those accommodations for that child are being met. And a lot of the times that's where the issues lie. And then it goes into the academic piece where the children really struggle. But if you have the right team, you have the right people in place, then you work together and the child can, do amazing things.
So I believe in parent involvement. I'm a very involved parent. I always have been. I'm on the board of the school. But I do get involved and I constantly, if my kids hit a brick wall with their teachers, I'm like emailing, Uh, what would you say from a teacher's perspective as far as parent involvement? Do you want the parents to be more involved, or would you say let the kids kind of handle it on their own and the parents take a step back?
So it's an interesting question. I think a little bit of both. I think it's very important for parents to be involved because I believe you do need to advocate for your children. And I think that teachers and schools see that. And when they see that a parent is involved, they second guess things sometimes, versus if the parent is not involved. I do believe, however, as children get older and go into middle school, especially if they have an IEP or a psychological evaluation, it is very important for the parent to explain to the child what their right is and the accommodations and to advocate for themselves. So I definitely think we need to advocate for our children all the
All the
time,
time.
no
I'm
matter
in a
what.
complete agreement.
100%. I think it's so important. I advocate also for my kids all the time. But I also think as they get older, it's important for them to feel comfortable to advocate for themselves because a learning disability also doesn't go away and it's going to go with them everywhere. And
They
they
just have
need
to
to
learn
know
how to master it.
exactly. And if they know their accommodations and they know what works for them and they advocate for what they need, then they're going to get it. But of course, they need our help along the way.
Right. And
They need
advocating for
us.
yourself doesn't stop in school. You
Yeah.
advocate for yourself in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Like school's just kind of a place where you can start practicing that
Right.
and having your parents support and having them teach you, okay, these are your accommodations. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. This is what you deserve and need to thrive in a
Right.
classroom. And you know that and you have that confidence instilled in you by your parents. It would be easier for you to go
Of
to
course.
your teacher, hey, this isn't right.
Well,
This is
my kids are like, "Mom, don't write that email. Don't get involved.
well,
You're
well,
too involved. Don't get involved.
my
Let us
son's the
handle it."
same way. Of course, you want them to be able to advocate for themselves and stand up for themselves, but sometimes they do need a little help from us, and that's okay. And of course, they need that support system. And, even as an adult, sometimes I still have that support system from my parents. And, you definitely you always have to advocate for your child, no matter what, because it's so important. And they need to know that you have their back, that you're there for them as well. And that's something that'll keep their self esteem up as well and their confidence. They know, okay, if I need help with this, I have somewhere to go. I know someone's there to help me.
So outside of the decorating that you did in the sensory gym at Kidz Solutions, you had also mentioned at home you were redesigning your children's playroom, and they don't necessarily have learning exceptionalities, but the color palettes and the steps that you took to redesign, you said, had a positive impact on how they interact with that environment. Could you let us know a little more about that?
Yes, of course. So, as I said before, less is more. So, I do think it's very important when you're designing a playroom, to use the colors, like you were saying, calming colors, lighting. The lighting is very important, I feel, even for me. But when I did decorate my kids' playroom, I think it's also adapted as they've gotten older. So now we're in the process of redecorating, which I'm going to come to you as well for some suggestions for
Of
the
course.
nature based. But I think it's very important to create a space where it's organized, of course. So labeling things, making sure you have things in bins, but also creating a space where there's enough space for them to explore, to imagine, to create, and I think that has a very big part in a playroom. So, as kids get older, they need different things in their playroom, but I kind of created two different spaces in my house. One was a playroom where it was a little more cozy. It had an area for them to explore. It had their toys in specific bins. And then upstairs, I created a smaller space where it's more academic, so they had everything that they needed for academics and books and magnetiles and, even things as simple as the magnetile colors can make a difference.
Of
Now
course,
they're
it
changing
does.
the colors.
They're changing the colors. So I remember when my kids were little, and I was still a stay-at-home mom before I started Sarah Z Designs. One day I just I'm very artistic and I love to paint. And I took apart the playroom and I painted an entire wall. I think it was 14 feet wide by 10 feet high, the scenery from Aladdin, and I remember painting the entire top as a light blue sky and then going into a darker, and Jasmine and Aladdin on their magic carpet ride with the scenery of the entire palace and
You painted
all. I
that?
painted the entire wall
Wow.
with
It's
grass
incredible.
and trees and then little animals and birds, and I remember just my kids did not want to leave the playroom. They just thought they were in this outdoor space seeing Jasmine and Aladdin and the genie. And it was just so inviting and cozy. And they just felt like they were in the cartoon and they did not want to leave the playroom. And I remember I said, wow. And everything was organized in bins and by color. And I said, wow, what a great space. Not even knowing the design aspect of it. But that's going back to design and great art, or whatever it is that you incorporate is so important. And, not everybody can afford a designer, and that's fine. But the tips that I would like to share as a designer and as a biophilic design specialist is that it's very easy to pick the right light blue or light green or something calming for a room and just paint the wall. You could do it yourself. It doesn't take much. Throw in a couple of pillows, throw in a matching coffee table book. That's something to create your own space of what inspires you and what you want to see and what you like and what makes your space safe and cozy. And it could transform the way you feel and the impact that the room has on you as whether you're an adult, whether you're in a child. And I think that, you don't need a lot of money. If you cannot afford a designer, you could just there's so many do it yourself projects that,
Oh,
you
yeah,
could
I
transform
agree.
a room. Throw in a pretty plant or a tree or something that is, wow, I walk into this room, there's such a good feeling. I'm calm. And a lot of nature inspired.
Yeah.
So
It
that's
makes such a difference. My playroom was my favorite room, and it was when I redesigned it for the second time because I used a lot of like calming colors, and I think that it makes such a big difference. And it makes a difference for the kids too. They want to be in the room. If you come home to a house, I feel that's cluttered and things are everywhere, and your parents have no idea where anything is, that's going to make the child also feel
of
disorganized and
course.
not know where to look. So I think it, like you were saying, it's so important, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You can put little things in place,
Right.
and like you said, paint a wall, change the light bulb in the room.
It's true.
The lighting can change everything. Put a little more white, white desk rather than a dark wood
Right.
desk. Little things like that can make such a difference. So I think that it's really amazing what
That's
you
true.
do.
I agree. I feel like today's episode, this is a really, really important conversation to be had, not only for children with learning exceptionalities, but for their parents and children
Hmm.
without learning
Right.
exceptionalities, because our environments really do directly impact the way we're able to exist within a space or
Yeah, of
learn,
course.
right? So, like, I'm
100%. It
just
was
really,
very, very important. And
Yeah,
yes, I'm really grateful to
I
have you
agree.
here. And
yes, we
Thank you
appreciate
so
you
much for
coming on and
having
giving
me.
us a background of what you
Thank
do.
you.
And great.
this is great. Like
Yes.
Kidz
Thank you.
Solutions,
It was
like
a
how important.
pleasure. It was an honor to be on
Thank you.
here. Amazing.
Yes.
I've learned so much too, while I'm in the process of decorating my own playroom at home. I'm gonna take all the tips
Yes,
and put them in.
definitely.
Yeah, for sure. But no, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. And I'm glad that I was able to share everything that we do, and we were able to tie it into things that you guys do every day, which I think is so important because you change the lives of people as well,
Thank
you
you. And so
know?
do you,
Thank
starting
you.
when they're
Very, very
young
same
and then
way.
as they grow
Thank
older.
you. Thank you.
So, anybody that needs, hopefully you don't, but if you do, Tiffany from Kidz Solution,
Thank
thank you
you.
for being here today.
Absolutely
Thank you so
And thank you
amazing.
for
much.
tuning in
Yes.
to Bespoke.
Thank you to everyone
Thank
for
you.
watching. We hope that you've been able to get as much out of this as we have. This has been, like I said, a very, very important conversation. And I hope that you're able to take these tips and these tricks and carry them into your own day-to-day life in your own homes, and that this has been as good for you as it's been for
For
us.
us.
So thank you for joining, and we hope to see you next time. Bye
Bye.
bye.